Right now, if you're an American, there's a number that defines you more than your credit score, your job title, or even your net worth. It's your income percentile. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most people don't know where they stand. The median household income in America is around $75,000. Sounds reasonable, right? Except the median individual income is only $44,000. That gap isn't a math error. That's the sound of two people working just to stay in place. And if you're watching this thinking you're doing fine, that you're making good money, I'm about to show you why your instincts might be completely wrong, or why they might be more right than you realize. By the end of this, you'll know exactly where you stand, and that knowledge is going to change how you think about the next 10 years of your life, because the numbers don't lie, they just hide in plain sight. Let's start with something simple. What does an average American actually earn? In 2026, the median household income sits at approximately $75,000 before taxes. That's two people combined bringing home money. So cut that in half. One person working full-time, year-round in America takes home around $37,000 to $38,000 before the government takes its cut. Now, the median household is different from the mean. The mean average is around $104,000. That gap, $27,000, tells you everything you need to know about income inequality in this country. A handful of people are making so much money that it pulls the average way up, leaving most people below it. Think about it this way. If you're in a room with 9 people making $50,000 and one person making $500,000, the average in that room is $95,000. But 9 out of 10 people in that room are making half that. The average doesn't describe the room, it describes the math, not the reality. This is important because it means when you read headlines saying average American makes $104K, you're being shown a number that doesn't actually describe most Americans. It's a headline number. It's designed to make things sound better than they are. Here's where it gets interesting. The top 10% of earners in America make around $160,000 or more per year. The top 5% make $250,000 and above. And the top 1%? They're operating in a completely different economic universe. Some of them make in a day what the median American makes in a year. But for most people, the 50th percentile, we're talking about $44,000 annually. That's one person, full-time, 1 year, before taxes. So let's build out what an average American actually looks like with that money. You're making $44,000 a year. Take home after federal taxes, state taxes, and Social Security is probably around $33,000 to $35,000. That's $2,750 a month.
Rent, $1,200. That's gone. You've got $1,550 left. Utilities, internet, phone, $200. Car payment or public transit, $200. Auto insurance, $150. Groceries, $300. You're down to $700 a month. That $700 is where everything else lives. Dental work, a car repair, a medical bill, an unexpected flight home, clothing, your emergency fund. That's it. Most Americans in this bracket have less than $1,000 in savings. So when the $700 runs out, they use a credit card, and now they're paying 18 to 25% interest on survival. Now scale up. What if you're in the 75th percentile? You're making around $85,000 to $90,000. After taxes, that's about $65,000 a year, $5,500 a month. You can afford $1,600 in rent and still have $3,200 for everything else. You're not rich, but you're stable. You can save $500 a month. In 10 years, that's $60,000. But what if you're in the 90th percentile? You're making $160,000 plus. After taxes, around $110,000 to $120,000 a year, $9,000 to $10,000 a month. You can save $3,000 a month without thinking about it. In 10 years, that's $360,000 before compound interest, just sitting there, growing. But here's the kicker. There's almost no relationship between how hard you work and where you land on this spectrum. Some of the hardest working people in America are in that first group. Nurses doing 12-hour shifts, teachers grading papers at midnight, single mothers working 2 jobs. And some of the most comfortable people are there because of where they started, because their parents could afford to buy a house, because they didn't need student loans. That's not comforting, but it's true. Income is just the first number. It's not the whole story. Because Americans don't just earn money, we're also constantly bleeding it. The average American household spends $6,000 a year on health care, even with insurance. Child care, if you have kids, is $15,000 a year in most metro areas. College debt, the average person graduating with debt carries around $38,000. That's a monthly payment of $500 to $600, sometimes for 10 years, sometimes for 20. Then there's the thing nobody talks about, inflation working backwards. In 2020, $44,000 felt like a certain amount of purchasing power. In 2026, that same $44,000 buys you noticeably less. Your paycheck hasn't changed, but what you can afford with it has. It's the same salary. Your life got more expensive. You got poorer. And here's the architectural problem. Wages in America have basically flatlined for 30 years when you adjust for inflation. But housing costs have tripled. Healthcare costs have quadrupled. Childcare has gone up 5-fold. Student loans didn't even exist at scale 40 years ago.
A boomer in 1985 could buy a house on a single teacher's salary. You could graduate from state school with no debt. Today, both parents working full-time teaching jobs can barely afford a down payment. That's not because teachers got worse. It's because the system changed the rules without giving people a raise. It's not that people are worse at money. It's that the system changed the playing field while everyone was still learning the old rules. If you're in the top 20%, making over $130,000, this doesn't apply the same way. Your income climbed. Your major expenses didn't triple. You benefited from the gap. Your wealth compounded. If you're below the median, you're fighting the gap every month, and you're losing ground. Here's what the hype says. Start a side hustle, build passive income, invest your way to wealth. Here's the reality. The median American household has less than $5,000 in savings. The median individual has less than $1,000. They don't have a side hustle. They have a job, sometimes 2. They're not investing. They're surviving. Meanwhile, the wealthiest 10% own 70% of the wealth in this country. Not 70% of the income, 70% of the accumulated stuff. Houses, stocks, businesses, all of it. And that percentage gets bigger every year. That's not because they work harder. Statistically, they work fewer hours. It's because they started from a different place, and compound interest works in one direction, toward people who already have money. The person making $160,000 a year can invest $3,000 a month. After 30 years, that's $1.08 million before returns. The person making $44,000 a year can invest, if they're lucky, $50 a month. After 30 years, that's $18,000 before returns. The difference between those two numbers is not effort, it's starting position. The hype says you're one decision away from changing your life. The reality is that if you're starting from $44,000 a year, your one decision won't change much. You need 10 decisions, or luck, or a lot of time. And time is the most expensive thing for someone in this position, because you need to work just to stay still. You don't have the luxury of taking risks. You can't start a business with no capital. You can't wait 5 years for something to work out. Time is what creates wealth, and poor people have no time. Here's what this means for 2026 specifically. We're at a weird moment. Unemployment is low, but wage growth is still lagging inflation. The cost of living keeps going up. Mortgage rates are higher than they've been in years. And if you're under 40, buying a house looks less like an investment and more like a luxury you'll never afford.
The average home price in America is around $420,000. To buy that, you need to make around $120,000 a year. 70% of American households don't make that, so they rent. And rent is going up faster than wages. What's happening is a quiet segmentation. The top 20% are building equity. They're buying assets that appreciate. In 10 years, they'll be significantly wealthier, maybe $400,000 wealthier just from real estate. The bottom 50% are renting, paying down debt, and treading water. They're giving their money to a landlord every month. The landlord builds equity. They build nothing. In 10 years, if nothing changes, they'll be in the same place. The middle is being compressed from both sides, trying to afford a life that's getting more expensive while watching the top pull away. And nobody's talking about it because the economy looks fine on the surface. Unemployment is low. The stock market exists. GDP is growing. But those numbers are averages. They're not your number. They're not the experience of the nurse making $52,000, or the teacher making $48,000, or the retail worker making $35,000. Those people are the economy too. They're just not counted in the headlines. So where do you stand? If you're making over $100,000 a year, you're in the top 30%. You have options that most people don't. The system is working for you. You probably don't realize it because you're surrounded by other successful people, but the system is working. If you're between 50 and 100,000, you're in the middle. You're probably stressed about money in ways that don't quite make sense to people above you. You work hard and still feel behind. Now you know. It's the math. If you're below 50,000, you're doing the job that keeps society running. You're nursing, you're teaching, you're building, and you're being paid as if that's fine. The system is working against you. Here's the thing nobody wants to say. Your income percentile matters more than your work ethic right now. Your birth date matters more than your motivation. The decade you were born in determined whether housing would be affordable. It determined whether college would cost $5,000 or $100,000. It determined whether you'd have time to invest or just time to work. That's not fair, but it is the system. So the real question isn't where you stand right now. The question is whether the math works in your favor, whether time and compounding interest are on your side, whether the system is building your wealth while you sleep or just extracting it while you work. If you are, you're lucky, and you might not even know it. If you aren't, you already know it. Every month tells you.